And Mindy Kaling, I am once again fighting for my life. So you may or may not have heard about the show called The Sex Lives of College Girls on HBO, created by Mindy Kaling and Justin Noble. And I figured, since I have lived the experience of being a college girl, I am the person to talk about this show. This show, in my opinion, is underrated because I don't see a lot of people talking about it. Something that I do really appreciate about the show is that the characters are between the ages 18 and 22. And as I am in that very age bracket, it is frustrating to not see enough media capturing that very chaotic, messy, lost phase of your life. So yeah, season 1 dropped around this time last year, and the last episode of season 2 came out this morning, and I want to talk about the show now. The show follows 4 college freshmen, Whitney, Bella, Leighton, and Kimberly, who live together in a dorm at a New England liberal arts college. The show's title's pretty self-explanatory. It is about their sex lives, but don't be mistaken if you haven't watched the show yet. It is also just about their general college lives. Bella is this Indian American student who comes to college really wanting to bust out of her shell and become a comedy writer, so she's basically another self-insert character that Mindy Kaling has written. Whitney is the star soccer player who's also the daughter of a senator, and then Leighton is a rich legacy student who's also a closeted lesbian. And then lastly, Kimberly is a low-income student from a very small, very white town in Arizona. And I just first want to touch briefly on what I loved about season 1 and what got me to come back to watching season 2. If you only care about my thoughts on season 2, you can skip ahead, I guess. One thing I found to be really well done about the show is how they differentiate these 4 girls. I feel like when I watch a lot of young adult shows with more than 1 or 2 characters that are women, I feel like there isn't a lot of time dedicated to each and every one of them, so only maybe like one of them is actually very nuanced and multidimensional. But this show takes the time for all 4 girls, and they're able to write their dynamic well enough that all 4 of their personalities really shine through, and you can see how different each and every one of them are. In terms of storylines, the show pleasantly surprised me by writing another teacher-student relationship, but actually doing it right. In season 1, Whitney was dating and sleeping with her soccer coach, Coach Dalton, and it was very, very slimy. And the beautiful thing is that unlike shows like Pretty Little Liars and One Tree Hill and Riverdale, it actually was not portrayed as hot or cute. It was actually portrayed as very weird. In fact, when that gets out, Whitney's soccer team comforts her and reminds her that she's only 18 and he was really the adult in the situation and took advantage of his power over her in terms of his age and also his status as her coach. I also liked Leighton's storyline about how rejecting a part of yourself can really negatively affect the relationships with other people that you really care about, but also at the same time you can't force someone to come out of the closet before they're ready. I also found Kimberly's storyline pretty realistic, the idea that she came from a small town in Arizona, so for her taking classes at Essex, there's a learning curve for her, and also the idea that she has to work multiple jobs in order to pay for college, and that struggle to balance both school and work. So at the start of season 2, we pick up right where we left off on season 1 with Kimberly losing her scholarship because she cheated, and then Leighton coming out as gay, and then also Whitney moving on from Coach Dalton and starting to date Kanan, and also Bella leaving the Catalan, the former comedy group that she was in, and starting a new one with her peers that's female-led. And usually I start with the things I like and then end with the things I didn't like, but today I feel compelled to start with the things I didn't like and end with the things I like. And the first thing I need to get out of the way is the character Bella. So there are 2 things that really bother me about Bella's character, and I'm gonna start with the one that gained a lot of traction on TikTok. In the beginning of the series, Bella says this line to her parents while she's moving into her dorms, where she says that she was an Indian loser with cystic acne and sweaty armpits, but then she had like a glow up.
4 months ago, I was an Indian loser with cystic acne, sweaty armpits, and glasses. But with one LASIK procedure, an Accutane prescription, and medical-grade Botox injected into my armpits, I'm normal.
And a lot of people, specifically South Asians, were like, Mindy, why did she have to say Indian at the front of that? Why couldn't she just say she used to be a loser? What are you trying to say? And this is not the only instance where Bella does this. When she's introducing her parents to Kimberly and her other hallmates, she says, these are my Indian parents, when it's like, no, they're your parents. And as you may be able to tell, I am brown. I am South Asian and I am Indian, so I feel like I can give my 2 cents on this. This is clearly Mindy writing from her own experience. She did this in the Mindy Project, and she also did this with Never Have I Ever. And there's nothing wrong about this in and of itself. There's nothing wrong with writing in your experience, especially because this is true to a lot of Indians who have struggled with internalized racism or have had stereotypes placed on them from an early age or have unintentionally othered their parents. My problem with this, though, is that Mindy has already done this multiple times in her career. There's not a lot of representation on South Asian girls in Hollywood. In fact, I can count them on my hands. And Mindy wields the power to write a variety of South Asian women in multiple shows. So when she sticks to the same I'm an Indian loser who needs to become hot and date a white boy, I don't want to say taking away, but I'll say it's limiting the opportunity for us to be outside of this box. Also, a big thing for me is don't write a character with internalized racism if you're not going to address it, because then what are you trying to say about it? That's the good thing about Never Have I Ever. It centers around Devi, and you go on this journey with her where she gets called out in season 3 for her internalized racism, and she has a lot of character development throughout the series because the show is about her and has the time to really take care of that. With Bella, though, it isn't even really acknowledged. In fact, it's only within the context of her being a comedy writer in which her identity as a woman of color is mentioned. Like, you expect me to believe that in the years 2021 and 2022 there aren't any other Indian students that Bella's ever met? Also, you're telling me that Whitney being a woman of color is going to inform her overall college experience, which I like and I'm glad that they put in there, but it's not with Bella. And on one hand, something I consider progress are characters of color being able to exist in media and not have their storylines or their whole character be about their marginalized identity. But at the same time, don't tell me that Bella's identity affects her aspirations and career, but not her overall college experience. I would love to see Bella bond with other South Asians the way Whitney has been able to find camaraderie and find community with the other Black students and organizations at Essex. Or at least be called out for her internalized racism, for God's sake. It's a shame too because they had the opportunity to do this in season 2 when Bella's friend Priya from home came to visit. Bella hurls the same sort of stuff at her about how she was an Indian loser and now somehow she got hot. Like, is it that hard to believe that some of us are hot? Mindy, I'm fighting for my life over here. The other thing about Bella that really bothers me, that's right, I'm not done, is how her sexuality and sex positivity are portrayed. I get that Mindy and the writers wanted to write a character that is sexual and desirable, but Bella is straight up problematic. She not only gave sexual favors in season 1 to get into the Catalan, but she also slept with Dan, a famous comedian, in season 2 in order to get ahead of Eric, also cheating on Eric. Like, she didn't learn anything from season 1, and her apology wasn't even a real apology. And I have to say that the actress Amrit Kaur does a really good job of playing her, because she's able to play Bella in a way that can almost fool you into thinking that Bella's just eccentric and just quirky and unapologetic. She's also just problematic as a person in general and just really awful. I'm not that invested in whether or not she transfers in season 3 because she just isn't a good person and has done a lot of bad things. And Mindy Kaling, I am once again fighting for my life. Now that that rant is over, I can move on with other things I didn't like. For one, why was Whitney put with college Walmart Ben Gross? Like, he was never likable, he was rude and misogynistic, and when he asked her out, that was not cute, that was not direct, that was not confident, that was too much. I don't know what compelled the writers to do this and to write Whitney being attracted to that. It just seemed like they had no idea what to do with her character. The next thing is about Leighton getting chlamydia and then not telling her sexual partners. I like that Kimberly called Leighton out for withholding necessary sexual health information from her sexual partners. However, I don't really feel like she got actual consequences for it. Like, yes, she was confronted at the Kappa event, but she still got into the sorority anyway, and then after that episode, it was never mentioned again and she didn't get any more consequences. So then it just feels like that storyline was there for filler instead of to actually say something. Another thing is, it's not really realistic for Kimberly to donate her eggs in order to pay for 3 more years of college, because 1 round covers a semester's worth of college, not even like a year. So is she gonna be doing this every semester? Is she gonna reach the lifetime maximum for donating eggs, which is 6 times, by the way? Like, I would have much rather seen Kimberly take a more realistic approach and then deal with the consequences. Like, dare I say Bella's idea of selling feet pics might have been better? I am kidding. And speaking of Kimberly, just why did they write her and Kanan getting together in the last 2 episodes? That came out of nowhere. It really seemed like they just put her with Jackson and then the writers were like, well, we don't know what to do now, so we're just gonna break them up. Like, it made no sense and it came way out of left field, and something that I actually loved about the series is that within these 4 girls, there's no love triangle. But now this show follows a trend of all other young adult shows where there is a love triangle within the core group of friends. And it sucks because I really liked Kimberly, but oh my god, Kanan and Whitney were dating 5 episodes ago and she's clearly not over him. Just a pro tip for all you young kids out there, since a lot of young adult shows don't really get the memo on this, don't date your friend's ex or significant other. Just don't. And lastly, I have a hard time believing that frat parties are your entire social life in college. In the beginning of the season, the girls are banned from a frat because Kimberly exposed the frat for a big cheating scandal. And I just have a hard time believing that every single person at Essex goes to frat parties in order to have fun, so that when that happened, they were just alone on a Friday night. Like, where are the non-academic clubs and societies? Where are the cultural organizations? It's also confusing messaging because in seasons 1 and 2, the people at the Women's Center call out the Greek life at their school for being misogynistic and transphobic and such, and yet the girls care about going to frat parties so much that they spend the first few episodes trying to win them back over. Like, what is the show trying to say? That being said, one of the things I actually did really like is how they highlighted the homophobia and transphobia of the Kappa sorority at the end of season 2. In particular, it shows how some of the alumni members are homophobic and transphobic, and how some of the Kappa members that probably aren't personally affected by it want to stay silent in order to get their money and get their donations. It was a great opportunity to show how Layton has developed over the last 2 seasons and for her to defend her own identity and her friends. And I also got the sense that the whole Kappa thing for Layton throughout the show was more for status and for connecting with her mom than it was actually hers. So when she realized at the end of the season that being in Kappa wasn't really for her and that she didn't feel like herself in that group of people, I thought that was a really great arc. In the same vein, I liked Layton's second storyline of dating someone who is exactly like her and looks exactly like her. I just thought it was very funny and very fitting. I also think it was a good opportunity for Layton to develop as a character, dating someone who actually makes her nervous and who doesn't feed into her superiority complex. I also thought it was a great opportunity because she was able to see all the things that people criticized about her, and therefore the things that she actually wanted to change and better herself for. And I thought that the scene where Layton comes out to her dad was very sweet. In terms of parent-child relationships in the show, I think theirs is the best. I also really liked what they did with Whitney and having her step outside of the box of being a star athlete, because in this season it's the off season and she's not playing soccer, so she actually has to think about what interests her and what classes she wants to take. And she decides to step outside of her comfort zone and take a really hard biochemistry class that's notorious for being really hard and weeding people out. But she works really hard and she does really well, and she finds that she actually likes it, so she becomes a woman in STEM.
I am a woman in STEM. Bunsen burner.
I just loved it for her, and I also think that's just what college is about, just finding who you are and what interests you and what you want to do. I also like that in taking this class, there was a side plot of the TA constantly mixing her up with the one other black girl in the class, because if I had a nickel for every time that happened to me in my life, I would be able to retire. So I thought it was a very realistic storyline. And the last thing that I love that I just absolutely need to point out is the character Leela. She's just so funny and she's absolutely the scene stealer of the show.
Get Nico something nice but slightly impersonal so he doesn't think you're trying too hard. Maybe a nice journal.
A journal? Hot guys don't journal. They just let their thoughts fade away. It's what makes them hot.
I feel like what they did with her character is what they tried to do with Bella, but then with Bella they just cross a line. Something that the show is really big on is destigmatizing sexuality for women and also including the female gaze rather than the male gaze. And so not only is Leela a really funny character, but she gets to do that and swap those gender roles. However, Leela never crosses a line with the guys that she gazes at. Like, she'll talk about guys to the women in the show, but she'll never force them to do anything or invade their privacy. And then there's Bella, who will wear your underwear and then ask about explicit details about your partner. And Leela got more screen time this season being a manager at Sips, and I also just love her dynamic with Kimberly because they balance each other out in scenes so well. Yeah, Leela is just the best character. I know I did kind of shit on this show, but I do think that it's worth giving a shot if you haven't seen it. Season 1 is a lot better than season 2 in my opinion. However, I have hope, because if this show is anything like Mindy Kaling's other show, Never Have I Ever, that means that season 3 might be the best season, which the show got renewed for. Hopefully Kimberly is flamed for that girl-on-girl crime and Bella gets an iota of character development. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel.